Hurrah! Hello, welcome everybody.
Welcome.
To Sensei's Talk, Sensei Speak, episode number, we don't know. We're kind of losing track of what's what right now.
I don't remember, yeah.
Next episode. So this one was predicated by a conversation I had recently with one of my peers in the industry, Malcolm, and the idea that de-escalation is a very hot button topic that not enough people work on as a general rule. And that's a whole separate thing. There's a seminar coming up on that. We can talk about that in the near future. What else I thought would be interesting to talk about today is the idea that de-escalation looks different based upon who you are in the situation. Mm-hmm. And there are some pretty wide gaps in how to de-escalate potential violence. Note, de-escalation does not mean calming things down per se. That's really important as a distinction. But how to de-escalate your threat level based upon this idea of violence dynamics. So I'll kick it over to you for some de-escalation thoughts. You teach the Warrior Women class. You've had conversations about this many times.
And sometimes that de-escalation comes from within ourselves and you just maybe have to just walk away.
Step one, right?
So, but as women, it's a tricky subject that we talk about because one response might get you somewhere that you don't want to be, and another response is going to get you somewhere that you don't want to be. So for women, it's going to be a little bit of a different conversation as far as what is actually happening, what is the goal of the other individual, and how do we kind of address that right away. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of going to be the talk today about kind of circling back around, and I'm being very vague right now.
We'll get some specific examples.
But yeah, getting into a little bit more specifics in a little bit. But I think the first part of the conversation is talking about what exactly is de-escalation, I guess what we define de-escalation as. So why don't you do that? Why don't you give the actual definition and what you see de-escalation as?
So when you look up de-escalation, most of the time you'll see things like law enforcement taking a elevated individual and bringing him down to a calmer state to make the situation safer. Mm-hmm. That may be an effective example of one particular version of de-escalation. But for women, you have this idea of process predators or predators who want you. The de-escalation in that case is not about calming things down. That might be what they want, mm-hmm. right? So for us, de-escalation is all about taking a potentially dangerous moment in time or a potentially threatening moment in time. Danger, threat can be different things. Could be a social threat versus a physical threat. And literally from an escalated state, how do we lower that escalation? How do we minimize that threat level? That may not feel or may not look like a particularly obvious moment in time, right? Sometimes it's, long before people get emotionally elevated, we can start de-escalating in a lot of ways. A smile de-escalates a lot of situations, mm-hmm. right? If somebody's having a really shit day and you give them a big old smile and ask them how their day is going, maybe you de-escalated their bad mood. Mm-hmm. That's a variation of de-escalation, right? If you are, in a potential bar fight, one of the examples we'll probably talk about, in some ways you might actually get the same effect with a sincere apology. Maybe that's the way you de-escalate things, mm-hmm. okay? So it has a couple of different looks, but the idea is potential threat, minimizing that potential threat is what we really refer to as a de-escalation effort or attempt.
But first we kind of have to figure out what the goal of the individual is. And there's a couple of different goals, right? There's a social type goal or a predatory type goal. Now, women are going to fall into both of these categories. More so, predatory, but also there's definitely some chances where you can fall into that social. I think of the drop-off line at like your kids' elementary schools is like pure mom rage.
There's a lot of mom rage there. I've seen,
where if some mom's like yelling at you, honking at you, right? Like that's a social type of crime. Like she's not trying to pull you away and take you to a dark alley and do naughty things for hours on end, but like
naughty things.
Nasty things, naughty things, I don't know. Maybe she is, I don't know. And if she is, maybe you guys would have some fun.
Whole different conversation.
But she's not trying to take your money. She's not trying to take you away, right? So she's just literally probably just angry at, her little cherubs. And taking that out on you, but a sincere apology like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to move up. every 15 seconds.
So that's your social dynamic.
Correct.
For males, that's two guys at a bar arguing.
Yep.
There's no real threat there per se, other than two potentially intoxicated morons elevating and probably somebody throwing a punch and both claiming self-defense later. That's mutual combat. These are the social type situations. Do you want to talk about predatory, since it's a little bit more common for females?
Yeah, where predatory becomes that like somebody's trying to actually isolate you from maybe being in a group, or somebody's trying to isolate you to steal your car keys, to steal your purse, or actually do bad things to you.
Naughty things?
Not naughty things.
Not naughty things?
I don't know why I said naughty. But do bad things to you.
You're the resource.
Correct. Yeah. And that becomes your whole goal is not to be that like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to like do that like people pleasing type, where that becomes a like, go F yourself. You know, like that de-escalation has to be...
De-escalation strategies.
Correct.
Yeah, so to the male situation, I guess we'll go male-female, right? Two idiots in a bar, sincere apology, hey, I'm really sorry, let me buy you a beverage, might successfully de-escalate the situation. Where for a female, that sincere apology might...
make you more of like a victim.
Yep. Or
make you look more like a victim. Now, I'm not saying... if you accidentally bump into somebody and spill their drink and then they turn around and they're like, what the hell? You're not going to be like, well, F off, you shouldn't have been standing there. No, like there's definitely going to be situations where like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, let me buy you another drink. Like there's going to be definitely some situations, but if somebody like approaches and, you know, starts to give you weird signs, and like that's kind of I think the biggest indicator is if you feel weird about the situation, or you start to like set boundaries, or you know you're like, oh, I don't need a drink right now, and then they start pushing back, that's weird behavior.
Denying your no, or
correct.
Your no.
And I think that is one of those checklists or check boxes that you have to check in your head, like this is weird behavior, I'm now going to tell them to F off. You know what I mean? Or kind of stand my ground a little bit more and not back down off of those boundaries.
Yep.
And then if they kind of keep pushing, then it becomes that escalating as far as, you know, getting the bartender's attention, or getting somebody else's attention, because if you're in public, that's where you want to stay. You want to stay in public. You don't want to get like, you don't want to go somewhere where it's going to be isolated, where it's just going to be you by yourself. You want to stay in that public sphere, and maybe you get the attention of the bartender, or security, or a waitress, or another person that, you know, might be able to help in that situation, just so that way they leave you alone.
So you're saying, and I agree with this is what we've talked about many times, it may look like this. In the event of social violence or social threat, woman in a car pickup line at school, males at a bar as easy examples, right? The de-escalation is a lowering of the intensity on purpose. An apology, being demure, acquiescing, whereas if a female's being potentially looking at as a sexual toy, unfortunately is a thing, your attempt to lower or de-escalate or be polite might actually be the thing that they're looking for.
Correct.
So in that case, de-escalation is by raising your intensity or raising your aggression.
Correct. And staying in that public sphere. And just maybe trying to get as much eyeballs as possible. Or I know in certain places they have, in the women's room, they have like order this cocktail if somebody's being creepy, or
in bars,
which I think is an amazing idea. Because some women are embarrassed to make a scene, and I think it comes from that embarrassment of like, it's my fault. And
we're trained from very young to be polite, right?
Correct. And you know, like, I don't want to be mean to this person, I don't want to be rude to this person, and it becomes like it's my fault, so I don't want to make a big scene and cause, you know, but that, hey, I'm just going to order this one shot and the bartender, you know, might be able to help me in this situation, is another way to kind of get around it. Or even just telling the bartender, or, you know, like I always say make a scene, but sometimes that's harder to do than just saying, oh, make a scene, you know, start yelling at them. Like, you're not probably going to eat. Exactly. Yeah. It's a lot harder to do than it is to say, like, this is what you should do. But just staying in that public area is going to be the best.
And this is one of those things too, like, we get people who've never done a single second of any kind of training will tell us, well, it's really easy, just tell him to go fuck himself. That is technically really easy to say, and occasionally really challenging to actually do. For those of you who have a naturally more aggressive tap that you can open up at any point in time, congratulations, you're going to be very good at this stuff. But we are taught from very, very young to be polite. That's a thing. And, you know, if you've never read The Gift of Fear, there are a couple stories in there about how women who were trained to be polite when they were young, like most of us are, have a hard time switching gears, being rude, enforcing their no, enforcing their boundary. You know, we work with a lot of kids here, and this month in particular, we're working on, we have a word of the month, and this month the word of the month is no. The kids know, after 3 weeks of talking about it, that the real word of the month is boundary setting. But boundary setting is an advanced concept for a 7-year-old, so we're using the word no. And just this week, I was sitting down and explaining with them about how your no and your boundary is going to correctly look different for different people. What you're going to allow friends and family to do has to be different than what you're going to allow a stranger to do. And you have that right, and we've had more than a few, not 7-year-olds, but 12 and 13 and even 14-year-olds run up against this idea of their very polite instincts, which are not a bad thing. Their very polite instincts causing them to glitch on the idea of being rude to a stranger. And it's, you know, it's obviously a tricky conversation to have about, like, you know, 12-year-old girls. You're trying to gently suggest that bad guys might want them someday. So it's a tricky conversation to navigate. But you know, letting them know that it's completely okay to say no to one person and yes to another person based upon how you feel in the moment. So for this, you know, there's no replication for training, right? I've watched you during Warrior Women, and, you know, people want to hit stuff. Yeah. Hitting stuff is fun, it feels good, and there's no bad feelings in that per se. For most people, I recognize some people actually have even a hard time with that. When we do our verbal training in jiu-jitsu, if we tell people ahead of time, class, nobody shows up. Yeah. There's a running joke about, like, we just don't tell anybody we're working on that stuff, so that way you come to class and you're gonna get sweaty, and then we do the talking stuff and everybody's like, ah, shit.
Yeah.
Crap. Ah, crap. I don't want it. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. I don't want to tell my friend to fuck off.
Because you are, and for women, I believe it's like 80% of sexual assaults happen from somebody you know. So if I'm not comfortable with telling some of my peers to F off, and we're doing this in fun, right? Like, we're doing this on a mat. Yeah. Everybody knows that this is the drill, and it's still awkward. It's still like, I didn't mean to yell at you. Like, I didn't.
Yeah, we hear this a lot.
You know,
it's
like,
so funny how
I didn't mean to call you that. I swear. Like, I love you, you know? And, you know, but it becomes very awkward, and it becomes very, like, real almost, where you're like, I have to say this to, you know, this person, and, like, they're the nicest person on the planet. Like, I don't want to yell at them, but it gets you kind of over that initial, like, this is weird, this is awkward, and the more times you do it, like, now I have no problem telling any of them to F off. But so the more times you do it, especially in practice, then it becomes that person that makes you feel uncomfortable, but you feel like you still have to be nice to because you know them. It makes it a little bit more comfortable to be able to do that, right. And tell them no, and to enforce your boundaries. And that kind of all cycles back around to knowing what they want, right? And of course, this is all situational. You know, there was an older gentleman the other day at Stop and Shop, and he pulled up beside me and rolled down his window, and he was like the sweetest little thing, and he was like, do you know where, you know, Staples is? And, you know, like, he was just so sweet. Like, obviously, A, I could take him, so, like, no big deal. B, it became like, I don't get any weird vibes. Like, it's just somebody trying to find directions, like, navigate, like, he's not doing anything weird. A genuine human interaction. Correct. Yeah. And then, of course, I'm gonna be polite, right? Like, of course, I'm gonna be like, oh, it's, like, right over here. You can park over here, and the sticky notes are in aisle 3, right? So It has to do with the different interactions, right? I was doing a seminar a couple weeks ago at Wellesley College, and you're in this parking garage, and there's like weird people walking around, and I have like 100 bags.
What she's saying is Wellesley College has weird people. I'm kidding, it's a joke. Go ahead, go. Sorry.
I'm just kidding.
That was too easy.
And okay, maybe there might have been weird people around. In my head, I'm like seeing ghosts over here, and you know, whatever. So, but, you know, somebody had asked if I needed help, but I was like, no, I don't need help.
I'm fine, go
I don't
away.
need help, leave me alone. And they just literally walked away. I was like, okay. Like now they're gonna talk to their friends about like that. There's this woman in a garage.
Strange woman in the garage weird. Getting lost.
Like I feel like Gollum, like,
my precious.
My precious. So, you know, and it becomes that situation where like I didn't really need help, and like I wasn't mean about it, but it was like, no thanks, like I'm all set. Because the first time I went, I was totally lost, and I had to ask people for help, and they were very nice. Yeah. And you know, it's a balancing act, right? And if I was in that situation where like I'm in a parking garage, you know, bad things happen in a parking garage. Obviously, like I'm on a college, but you know, whatever. But people use that college all the time for walking the trails, or you know, like it's a very open public space.
There's a lot of people going through there, yeah.
Correct. So you really don't know, and it's an all-girls school, so I just automatically assume men that are there are bad. So like I just automatically assume, because it's an all-girls school, I think.
There's male teachers.
Well, I didn't think of that.
I'm sure there are male administrative teachers.
Well, there probably are, but they're bad.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. But, you know, it just becomes that, like, if
we
somebody...
know a male that works at Wellesley College.
Oh, yeah, we do. He's a great guy.
He's a really nice guy.
Great guy.
Anyway.
So, but it becomes situational, yeah. And you know, like that parking garage at the Natick Mall, right?
Yep.
Like there's way more weirdos at the Natick Mall than there are at Wellesley College, you assume. But
confirmed.
But a lot of things might happen at the Natick Mall during wintertime because you're shopping and you have all the bags and you're distracted and you're trying to get your keys, and that's yep. the best time to go
and I have a
steal
field training
people's
note about
presents.
That. Yep. Field training note. If you want to practice your boundary setting, there's two places in particular that I recommend. I think you've heard me talk about this in class a couple times, where you can practice this with no recourse, with no adverse reactions. The mall.
Oh yeah.
Especially if it's busy. And like a busy season, like if it's dead July, middle July, and the mall's empty, probably not effective. But we get to like the holiday type seasons, you walk down that center concourse and all the kiosks in the middle where they have the aggressive salesperson, practice your de-escalation, practice your boundary setting, right? Salespeople are trying to get something out of you. They are literally, sorry salespeople, you're literally resource predators. Technically you're looking for barter and trade, take this crappy perfume and give me your resources, give me your cash.
I just sneeze on them.
Well, so we can probably have a conversation about...
They come at you with the perfume bottle and you're like, achoo! Get away from me. I'm allergic.
You know, but this is an opportunity for you to set a boundary, enforce a boundary, and practice you know, for women in particular, right? I'm a rare individual for them to try to really, they do kind of get my attention.
Do you want hair extensions?
I literally had a guy try to get my attention the other day at one of those hair kiosks. I looked at him, I was like, you're kidding, right? They just kept going.
Do you want beard extensions?
Yeah, I guess a good beard comb or something. My arms are kind of hairy. But it's an opportunity for you guys with no, there's no adverse effects here. Those people are told no 1,000 times a day. So it's a good chance for you. If you feel like you struggle with this, you know, you've become very good at it over the years. If you want to just kind of give them the Heisman and just stuff them in the face, not physically, but if you just kind of give them the hand and walk by, if you want to do a no verbal response, if you want to maybe test it and be polite and see what happens, you're going to get pulled into the vortex, right? The other place you can practice this, say?
A little A/B testing.
Well, and that's what I was going to suggest, is test your response. What are your instincts telling you? Maybe the first time you go in, what are your instincts telling you? The next time, I mean, you're probably not going to tell them to go fuck themselves, but
you can,
probably not.
It's a great thing.
Maybe that's your ultimate like homework. Maybe that's the ultimate like, how, can you get all the way to there? The other place you can practice this is car lots, because obviously car salesmen tend to be on the particularly aggressive side. So, but yeah, salespeople, it's kind of a really good place to practice this, because there's no recrimination. And like I said, sorry salespeople, I understand. We all understand you have your job to do. When I go into like BJ's and the Verizon guy there, or the AT&T guy there, and I'm always like, just give him the hand and I keep going.
I did feel wicked bad one day. I was in Home Depot and I was looking for something.
The solar guy?
And the solar guy, he was so sweet. He like helped me find what I needed, and then like he never mentioned anything about solar the whole time. He was so sweet. And then as we're walking back and like the checkout line and all this stuff, and he goes, "Do you own a home?" And I looked at him and I was like, "No, I don't."
You lied.
I did. I totally lied to him. I felt wicked bad. But I didn't really want to get into the conversation of, and I was like, "I'm just buying this for my dad."
Real quick as a strategy, by the way, very effective strategy, right? Allison took herself off the list by lying. You know, they're looking, this person, they're trying to sell solar power, right, for the house. They're looking for somebody that owns a home. If Allison rents, she's off the list because she doesn't have any control or power. So that lie can be a really effective way to be like, you know what, I'm not, that's a very rapid and effective de-escalation of a potential, you know, threat's a big word, but you know, somebody trying to get your time and attention, that's a threat to your time. That's a very effective way, so that is something you can practice as well.
But here's my thing, if I was legitimately interested in solar, then you take the time and you do.
Well, of course, yeah.
But that's the thing, it all depends on it depends back to kind of that previous conversation of the goal, right? A salesman's goal is to sell you something, and if you're not interested, then that becomes that conversation, right? If you are interested and you want those hair extensions or that perfume, then be my guest. Indulge them in their conversation.
I want hair extensions.
Long blonde ones.
Long blonde hair extensions.
That'd be funny.
You just
But it becomes the goal of the crime, right? Like, and with a salesman, and again, kind of going back to this like mall thing, if you are apologetic and you're like a very, you know, oh, I don't know, blah, 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 like you're not decisive, then that's when they are gonna kind of keep coming at you with more crap that you don't need. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call it crap, but
it's probably crap.
But it just becomes that conversation of the goal, right? That angry mom that's like beeping at you in the line, like it's not you, it's probably her. She's probably very stressed. Maybe you just suggest, hey, let's go get coffee and chit chat about why you're so aggressive right now, right? Like maybe that becomes a conversation, right? Like maybe that is I'm here to listen if you just want to vent about, you know, your husband and your kids, because I'm probably going through the same thing and we can be teammates together, you know, like maybe that becomes that conversation, or like, oh, I'm so sorry, that apology, or at that bar, as far as like maybe you bump into somebody and it becomes that apology is how you know, maybe you're with friends and your friend's getting a little rowdy with somebody and you pull them away and you apologize for the friend. Hey, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna buy you guys a round of drinks. You know what I mean?
I've had to de-escalate for friends.
Pull that friend away, or you know, just kind of be that in between, because it is gonna be a social thing. But if somebody's trying to, again, that isolation of pulling you away, pulling you away, and you get that weird feeling and you don't wanna go with them, then that becomes that staying in public and enforcing those boundaries and becoming more aggressive is going to be beneficial.
We're getting a little long. I'm gonna do a short story here. Once upon a time, my friends and I are out in Boston, and I did not drink during this period of my life. I really didn't drink until later in life. We are out, there's 7 of us, and you know, some of my friends were drinking. And there's another group of guys, there's 4 of these guys. I come upon a situation where one of my other friends who did not drink somehow got involved in this altercation because one of our other friends who did drink. Long story short, I walk over and one of my best friends, who is completely sober and the nicest human being on the planet, you know, got his shirts torn and he's bleeding from the nose because they mistook the person and punched him. Now, of course, I'm enraged, but we're outside at this point, and their group of 4 and our group of 7, and I have a running joke about this, their drunken fat guy and our drunken fat guy are screaming at each other and, you know, doing all the monkey dancing in the world. And all I could see was how this is, you know, again, I'm sober. I've got the training, and despite the fact that I'm really angered that one of my best friends, who's a really sweet, nice human being who's also sober, is bleeding with his shirt ripped. I'm like, nothing good can come out of this. So I did an entirely stupid thing, and I stepped between the two of them. Not a good idea, but you know, I got my friends to pull our fat drunk friend back, and I said, listen, you guys take your friend and just go that way, please. We're gonna take our friend and go that way, and let's de-escalate, right? So it was a verbal de-escalation, and I had to insert myself physically. I'm kind of tall, men are dumb, sometimes that helps a bit. As their group finally took 5 to 10 steps backwards, around the corner came a Boston cop, and obviously this would have been a horrible situation if they're going at it on the ground. So just by luck and happenstance, my timing was good. Not a hero story at all, just a like, ooh, bullet dodged at best. But because we were talking earlier about alcohol raising and making people make less good decisions, shall we say, you know, the opportunity to see the circumstance of what's going on around you, figure out what's going to be the easiest way to de-escalate, because the highest level order of win is not beating the shit out of the other guys. Not in that type of scenario, not in that social violence scenario. The highest order of win is our guys go home safe and your guys go home safe. That's a win for me if your guys go home safe, right? The problem is for our original conversation, for females in this group, that attempt to be polite or acquiesce or demur or de-escalate might make it worse.
Right, but I do think that situation does change if you're a man or a woman.
Oh, of course.
So I was in a very similar situation where one of our friends got hit, and of course...
Male or female?
Male. One of our male friends got hit. So we spread out and a couple went out the back door, a couple went out the front door. I'm upstairs trying to find all of our coats and everything, and I come down and none of my friends are there, and there's like a big scene and where they were, so I'm trying to find them. And then I come out and the kid is now yelling at the group. I find my group, kid's now yelling at my group. One of our female friends comes in and starts yelling back, and he starts going over to her and was like, I will absolutely hit a woman.
Menacing her, yep.
So I stepped in and I went in between the two of them and I said, buddy, this is not gonna be your night. And I ended up putting my hands on him, and he changed his tone very fast because I got very aggressive very fast. I put my, shocking. I put my hands on him, and I turned his head away, and I was like, you better walk away. And after that, he looked at me like he was actually a little terrified, which was good. But
God, there's probably an interesting conversation in that.
But he left, he did walk away, he did leave, he changed his tone very fast. And then of course my friends knew exactly what I was thinking, so they were it took like 2 of them to pull me away.
They had to de-escalate you.
They had to then de-escalate me, because now I'm adrenalized because I'm trying to find my friends. I have like 100 friggin' coats, and then I'm now getting in between 2 people, and I'm like ready to go.
There's probably a long and interesting conversation about female-male dynamic where the female out-monkey dances the male.
I did.
And backs him down.
And I wasn't even drinking.
Well, because you're sober and you're clear and you're setting a boundary, you're enforcing a boundary, and you're letting you're stating out loud what's going to happen if he violates the boundary. You're doing all the correct steps of boundary setting.
Yeah, basically.
You just did it in a very prototypically aggressive, masculine, social violent fashion in defense of your friend.
Right. And I mean, I feel like I'm the defender, because it happened to me again at another place where they were hitting. Look at your social circle. They were hitting on my friend. She wanted nothing to do with this guy, and he was being so aggressive. So I stepped in and I was like, leave her alone. And he goes, why are you such a bitch? And I was like, because I am. Like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. And then he started to then come at me even harder than he was coming at her. And then I literally am looking at him as I'm like getting further away from him. I was getting dragged back. And somebody in the background being like, buddy, I am saving your life. That's what they were saying as they're dragging me away. And no, I mean, nothing happened, obviously. And then that was the end of my night. I I had to go to bed. But
bedtime for Allison.
But yeah, there was 2 very different situations. I mean, there's a third one, but we don't have time to go into that. But
our short talk turned to 28 minutes.
But no, I'm always the one to protect my female friends. My male friends, you're on your own.
Well, and
protect yourselves.
That's valid, right?
My girls, I gotta protect them.
I've had many conversations with friends where, you know, if you have the opportunity to de-escalate, that's the highest order of win. As a general rule, I've been able to de-escalate things for the most part. You know, not being intoxicated helps weirdly for that. So do your math, take your own advice as you will on that. There's a lot of power in being the sober person in a situation that helps quite a bit. So at the end of the day, guys, we go back to the idea of violence dynamics, understanding what the threat is or what their goals of the bad guy is. Allison said this many times very effectively. Who are you in the situation? And, you know, there is a male-female dynamic to this because predators are going to want, as a general resource conversation, males, you're going to be a resource predator or prey because of your stuff. Females, it might also be your stuff, but it might be you.
But we're also on all of those lists too.
Correct.
Like somebody is gonna pick me over Paul to steal money, steal car keys. Like if they had a choice of A, B, I'm unfortunately getting picked. And of course, you know, they're probably gonna pick me to.
If it's just us two, but if there's another person who looks nothing like you and I.
No, I'm saying like if it was just us two, if they, you know, if they had to pick one. The way
you walk around with the level of awareness, and you're physically athletic, the odds of you getting predated are lower.
But it also comes back to that conversation of walking with a purpose. Like going back to that Natick Mall experiment, you walk through that Natick Mall like you have somewhere to be in the -2 times. Like you have that, like RBF or resting bitch face gets a really bad name, but I love it. It's like, it's my bread and butter of like, don't talk to me. And it's just like that power walking through. They don't even, and that becomes that experiment of, if I just power walk past these people, are they gonna get me? If I'm being nice,
gonna get me.
Am I being nice to these people? Are they gonna get me? If I just tell them like I'm not interested, but I'm like super nice about it, like what happens with these situations? And it's kind of a very similar like predatory type. But it's just that practice of
agreed.
I'm going there with a purpose.
Agreed.
I'm going there with a purpose to tell you to F off is my purpose.
And that might be the purpose,
Not to buy Christmas presents.
That's
why I go to the mall.
And again, little subtle ways you can practice this, right? And again, I like the one earlier too, guys, of you walk in a situation and maybe a clerk or somebody's clearly having a bad day. Maybe you de-escalate their bad day by being a nice, polite person and asking them about their day. You might be able to de-escalate their emotional state. That's really what this is all about, right?
No, definitely.
So, it was supposed to be a short talk.
I don't know how long that was.
31 minutes right now.
Oh, okay.
We thought it was gonna be like 7 or 8 minutes, but there's a lot of good data here. There's a lot of good material here to kind of work out. If you're watching with us right now, guys, you know, what might be additional practice methodologies that you guys can think of for very simple boundary setting de-escalation techniques? Again, I like the mall kiosks. I like the car salespeople only because they're easy opportunities. I'm sure there's probably like a, you know, you go to an RMV and there's a lot of cranky people. That might be an interesting challenge if you're really up to like, you know, boss level challenges. Walking
into an RMV, how's your day?
Yeah, let me know how that goes for you.
You look cranky.
So thank you guys for hanging. As always, like the video, share, comment down below what your experiences have been. And we appreciate you guys hanging in with us. Thanks, guys.